me, excitedly putting a lift on my Land Cruiser on Father's Day. Totally oblivious to the fact that basically everything will go wrong. Old spring, new spring. This one's a lot heavier. We weighed the vehicle. This is supposedly the correct spring. I'm a little worried about this one not being squishy enough for rock crawling. I've watched a lot of DIY videos where I'm pretty sure they edit out anything that doesn't go perfect.
Just bolt and play, right? How much turn? Whoa.
This channel is not like that. Unlike school, where you get the lesson and then you're given the test, this one plays out
Thinking about this, I'm doing it backwards.
a little backwards. First comes the test, and then we all get to learn the lesson. Okay, so why are we even messing with this beautiful build? If you guys watched the build series for Onyx Off-Road with Nate, when he built this, he took it on some pretty crazy trails. They successfully did the Rubicon with no problems. They did Fordyce. So it's a pretty impressive build as is. But there's a few things, just basic fundamentals that are wrong with it, and he even called them out toward the end of his build. It rubs up here, it rubs back here. This steering knuckle gets caught on this. This fuel tank is taking a beating. The middle of this vehicle just needs a little bit more clearance. We're catching on everything right here. The pinion seal is leaking, the rear brake line needs to be extended, and we need to find the air leak in the rear locker. Okay, so here's the build plan. We're gonna start out with the lift because it's gonna change some of the dynamics. So things like brake lines that we might need to fix later on, I don't want to fix them twice. We also want to be really careful to not get too tall, because if we get too tall, this thing's going to become tippy, and we don't want to do that for rock crawling either. We decided to go with an Old Man Emu BP51 lift kit. There's a couple reasons for that. First of all, right now we are using this shock. This is a Fox 2-inch shock. There's not a ton of adjustability there. We're trying to stick with the original plan that Nate had for this vehicle. You want to be able to drive it all the way to the mountain, off-road, and be able to drive all the way home. That means you got to be able to handle freeway speeds and turns, but you also want to be able to do rock crawling. When you're rock crawling, you kind of want that softer suspension that allows you to move through your full entire articulation, but that you don't want that on the freeway. The nice thing about the BP51 shocks is that instead of just being this basic unibody shock that's not that adjustable, it is a bypass shock. Now, maybe you've heard of bypass shocks. They usually look like this and cost a fortune because they have these external bypass tubes that stick out on the side, and they allow you to adjust both rebound and compression. Some adjustable shocks out there will allow you to adjust compression, and some will even claim that you can adjust rebound, but really it's just adjusting compression a different way. But if you want a truly adjustable shock where you can do both rebound and compression, you need to have bypasses. Now, if you have bypasses, then they can control release points. So they can make it harder to bottom out your shock or harder to top out your shock, which is really nice. It gives you a lot more performance, both in high speed and in low speed situations for that cornering to kind of combat the body roll. The Old Man Emu BP51 does not have external bypass tubes. It has internal bypass tubes. And instead of being a 2-inch shock, it is a 3-inch shock. So it's a significantly larger shock body. It also does have a reserve reservoir. We're probably not going to be dealing with a ton of heat issues with these shocks, but you know, you've got more fluid, you can handle heat better. The other thing with the external reservoir is it makes it to where you can have less pressure inside your shock, which means you have less odds of ending up developing leaks. Basically, I'm gonna crank it all the way to the softest when we're rock crawling, and then I'm probably gonna run it pretty on the top hard end when we're on the freeway to make it feel a little bit, you know how sports cars have that hard tuned suspension? This is never going to be a sports car, but we're going to try to get it a little closer to that, less body roll. Old Man Emu BP51 kits are made specifically for specific models. It is supposed to be 100% bolt-on. The only problem is there's always the variables, and the variables are, one of the biggest ones is what mods have you done to your truck and how much does your truck weigh? So in this case, we didn't take any chances with this. We went ahead and weighed the truck, and if you take the original curb weight of the vehicle and then you take it fully loaded with our mods, with what we were actually going to wheel, the difference from curb weight to that was about 850 pounds. So when we went in to pick which kit, different kits, while we just talked about the shocks, they also come with springs, because this has springs on all 4 corners. And the springs are what basically support the regular weight of your vehicle, and then allows your shocks to just handle dampening. And this is where things got interesting. So we went to a lot of pages and did our research, and basically they were always selling a regular kit, a medium weight kit, and a heavy duty kit. Okay, so we went ahead and we went with the heavy duty kit because it said exactly right on the website that the heavy duty kit was made for if you have added 800 pounds to the machine. Okay, so we actually received our kit and we went to work on installing it. I had a bunch of friends over, we were having a good time. Probably the first mistake we made that I would recommend you guys do is we didn't check the part numbers. So the whole kit came, we pulled everything out of the boxes. One thing with springs is a lot of times the spring boxes are not labeled with what spring rate they actually have. They just have like a really long part number on them. And then even on the springs themselves, they'll have a really long part number that generally gets rubbed off of the spring pretty easy. So we did the dumb thing of assuming that we got the correct parts, and we just went ahead and put the whole thing together. Once we did that, we should have known, because even when we were installing the springs, we were all a little shocked at like how stiff and big they were. This one's a lot heavier. We weighed the vehicle. This is supposedly the correct spring. And sure enough, we put them on there. Everybody else's kit, from not Modify, but like if you go to Cruiser Outfitters or Slee Off-Road, these are all companies that kind of specialize in Land Cruisers. And for some reason, they just didn't have the same sale and rebate going that Modify did. So we ordered it off of Modify to save 300 bucks. We ended up getting the wrong springs. We were supposed to get a 320 kilogram spring for the rear, and we ended up with a 440 kilogram spring. Now that doesn't maybe sound like a lot, but you would be amazed what that does to your vehicle. So instead of ending up with a 3-inch lift, we ended up with about a 7-inch lift on the rear of the vehicle. Same thing on the front. We ended up with the wrong springs there as well. We had 320 kilogram springs that were supposed to be 220. They're having us return the other ones and they're giving us a refund. So it wasn't that big of a deal other than all the wasted time on the install, but it's really funny. Check out how bad the truck looked. Okay, it's hard to see with cameras, but initially we only had about a 2-inch gap above the tire to the fender. Now, it has additional room to stuff in there, so we had more than 2 inches of travel, but there's only about a 2-inch gap. Now check this out. Like I said, cameras are deceiving. We now have a little more than a 10.5 inch gap. So that means this thing ended up getting lifted 8 inches. This was supposed to be a 2.5-inch lift. It got lifted 8 inches. Now, it's kind of common, let me explain something. It's kind of common for when you get a lift, especially if it's a car like this that has 311,000 miles on it and it's still on the original suspension, it's kind of common, well, it was on the original springs, not the original shocks. But it's kind of common for these things to sag a little bit, some of those springs, after they've been abused that long. So if you buy a 2.5-inch lift, and you've changed the weight of your car, and you've beat that spring up a lot, maybe your 2.5-inch lift turns into like a 3.5-inch lift. But it is not supposed to turn into an 8-inch lift. And the funny thing is that wasn't even the only problem, because check this out. Not only did we end up with an 8-inch lift here, well, if you go measure the front, so in the front we ended up with about 2 inches less than the rear. So now, instead of the car sitting level like it's supposed to, it's like sitting like this, as a major nosedive. It's actually almost hilarious how bad it is. When you come back here and look at this, it's hard to tell because with cameras you can never tell what's flat. But yeah, the rear end is way hiked up and the front is the nosedive down. Okay, so we've got a huge discrepancy between the height from the rear to the front. Both are too high, but they're also still not even. And then on top of that, look at this. This is even funnier. On top of that, we have a huge body lean. This side of the vehicle is sagging down about an inch, if not more, lower than the other side. Okay, so here's another example of a trap that you can fall into when you're installing your own lift. So the springs that come from Old Man Emu have an A spring and a B spring for the front, and an A and a B for the rear. If you call Modify, they tell you, hey, A is driver's side, B is passenger. And you don't really have anything to check it with because the installation instructions for springs, it doesn't come with anything. It has great directions on how to install the actual shocks, but it has no information on the springs. We went over to Old Man Emu's site. We couldn't find anything there, so we went into the FAQs. And sure enough, there was people asking this exact question. Which side does A go on and which side does B go on? Now, it's pretty obvious that the B spring is a longer spring. And longer spring, it's only longer by 10 millimeters. The longer spring is usually used to offset weight. So the first time we did it, we stupidly just did it the way that the people told us to. Totally wrong. The whole entire car was sitting completely crooked. So then we went to Old Man Emu. On their site, it literally says you install the B longer spring on the driver's side, and you install the other B, the rear B longer spring on the rear passenger side, on the opposite side. Well, we kind of did some logic here, and we just said, look, it's the longer spring. It's made to support weight. It's really simple. The front long spring goes where the driver goes. The rear long spring goes where the fuel tank is. Guess what? In the United States, the fuel tank and the driver are on the same side. So the B springs go on the driver's side, and the A springs go on the passenger side. When you follow the logic of the longer spring and follow the weight, it works really great. Guess what? In Australia, they drive on the other side of the road. So their diagonal directions are correct, but only for the Australian market. But that FAQ was an answer to US-based questions. So that's a whole nother point, is you can't always trust the installation instructions. You can't even always trust the manufacturer's website. Like sometimes you either just have to break down the logic and truly understand why it is a way, or you have to do it wrong, learn from it, and then get it right the next time. End of this, are we gonna end up with about a 2.5 to 3 inch lift? I don't know yet. You've caught up where we are. I'm gonna go open that box. Oh my gosh, these are heavy. All right. 2850J. The J springs are the longer springs. They're extended. So these are the fronts. There we go. 2850B. I don't know if you can see that. Probably not. Here we go. Gotta somewhat save the box, just in case we have to return them again. All right, if we balance these out, this is indeed the longer spring. And it is the B, 2850JB. All right, so now all we gotta do is we need to throw the correct springs on and take the other ones off. That'll be fun. We've already done this once. How bad could it be? Also, if you're curious what happened to the hood in the middle of this, I took the hood up to Overland Expo in Redmond with me and gave it back to Nate. I owed him that in exchange for a blank hood. I don't know what we're gonna do with it, but we're gonna do something special with it, but I can't copy his sticker, so I don't know, we'll do something else that'll be cool. All right, so for the record, this kit, which is what? Hammer beam. I can put a link down below. This spring compressor kit has saved our butts. It's a lot better than these ones that always break. These have all broken in this shop. We've done Tang Tools ones. We've used the Maddox ones from Harbor Freight. They all broke. This kit works phenomenal. So check this out. It's like $100. It's way safer.
Let's go for it.
That thing is remarkable.
You're hitting right here. if we can get that bottom end over. Can we rotate like this and then? There.
Okay, so we were successful with getting the spring switched out, which was awesome, and we've got it sitting on the ground now. I'll show you how that looks in just a second. Before I do that though, there was one more thing that we have to do, and that is correct the caster. So when you lift a vehicle, you're changing the alignment, the geometry, and we have these little bushings that gotta go into the leading arms or the radius arms. They have offset eyelets, and they are going to correct the caster from the lift. The car is down now, and it is level from left to right. It is level from front to back, so huge improvement there. The problem is it's still sitting a little bit high. It's sitting around 4 inches of lift. We do think it'll settle out a little bit. We need to load all of our gear back into it, fill the tank, and measure everything again after we've given it a chance to settle out. So last time we took this out, it was ruled completely and utterly unsafe. So I'm at least gonna buckle up my waist belt nice and tight. And we never really had problems until we were like over 35. Like it felt fine, like it feels fine right now. Feels great right now, actually. But over 35, if we did what we just did, we would have rolled the vehicle. Okay, well, here we go.
Oh, shoot.
I don't know, man. This feels... Yeah, that's 30.
Oh, it's feeling tight.
Kind of swaying a little bit on purpose. Because last time, if we swayed the tiniest bit, like we went out of control.
Yeah.
We're not, it doesn't feel out of control at all.
Oh, you went to 40.
Yeah, so already this is way better.
Oh, God.
This is what an alignment can do for you guys. All right, but this is...
We're going to do a straight on view here.
All right.
In case it does what it did.
Let's see. Sway, correct. It corrected!
Yay!
Steer!
We did it!
Wow, last time that sent us literally into oncoming traffic lane. There wasn't any traffic, but it sent us uncontrollably into the lane, and I just had to slam on the brakes. You remember? That was so scary. Oh, this is sweet. Okay. So yeah, we're going 50 miles an hour. I can turn, I can correct. Feels super stable. The funny thing right now is we have like every shock adjusted to a different number because they don't come
Oh, that's right. I
all set
forgot
at the
about
same
that part.
thing. So like it shouldn't actually be the most stable right now because we need to tune all the shocks.
Yeah.
But
no, that's fantastic.
It still works fine right now. It's no problem. Now we just need to get home before we smoke our front diff because we need to fix the rear seal, and I feel like it doesn't have the most fluid in it.
I feel so much better now.
Oh wow, that was shockingly better. The problem is it's not going to settle 1.5 inches. And if it's not going to settle 1.5 inches, that means the caster correction that we did is not enough. Because that only allows us 2 degrees to play with, and 2 degrees is not going to correct what's likely a 3.5 to 4 inch lift. So I already went online. I already ordered some brackets. There's these metal brackets that you weld on. They're very, very cheap. The hardest part is you actually just have to weld them on. But they will give us up to 4 degrees of caster correction, and they'll give us a little bit more playroom to dial it in. So they're probably a good idea anyway. I picked those up from OffRoad, so those will be here shortly. The other problem that the lift introduces is the panhard bar in the rear of the Land Cruiser is sitting at a pretty severe angle right now. And the problem with that is that makes the back end of your truck off center. And you can kind of feel it when you're driving. You can drive this thing like 55 miles an hour right now. It drives actually really smooth and works pretty dang good. The suspension feels really, really nice. But the problem is it's not as stable as it used to be. And to get it that stable, we're going to have to do a little more caster correction. We're gonna have to fix that pan hard bar in the rear. Same thing with that. It's metal brackets that you weld on, drops it down to being level again. The whole point of this video is for you guys. I don't have a sponsor on this video. I wish Old Man Emo sponsored me. I've bought 3 of these kits now, but there's no sponsor here. This video is 100% just made for you guys to help people learn. And the thing that you need to know is if you are trying to get brave yourself and you want to do a lift on your vehicle yourself, I want people to have realistic expectations. I don't want this video to scare anybody away from working on their car. You better believe that getting under that car, tearing all that stuff out, doing all that stuff, I know a lot more about this vehicle than I did before, and I don't know why I keep calling it a car. Everybody gets mad at me when I call SUVs cars. So this truck, when I get under this truck, we've learned a lot from this experience. If I ever break something on a trail, I feel a lot more prepared to work on it. So those are all good skills. Those are things you want to learn how to do. But if this was my daily driver, I would have been out of a vehicle for probably a good week and a half by now. It's only just now back to being drivable, technically. You need to understand the risks and the types of things that go wrong with this. Parts is always a nightmare. Like half the projects I do, somehow I end up needing a part that I somehow don't have, or I have the wrong part. I just feel like that just is a very common thing, and mechanics are so used to it, they don't even complain about it. And I'm not even complaining. I just want you to understand how these things kind of go. Remember when we started, I had that whole list of things? Well, we were able to cross off like 3. We fixed the bumps in the front and back, we fixed the lift, and guess what? We introduced 2 new problems. Now we gotta fix the caster and we gotta fix the pan hard bar. This is just how these things go sometimes. This is why off-roading can get to be a very expensive sport. Now, if you're into all this and you do all this work yourself, you can save yourself a ton of money. So I don't want this to scare anybody away. I hope this video encourages you to be brave and do this. None of these problems we encountered were unsolvable. In fact, they were all actually pretty easy to solve. We're going to get there. I'll do another follow-up video in the future where we go work through some of the other stuff on the vehicle. I hope this was helpful. These videos are 100% for you guys, so if you can, show some support and subscribe. That is always free, and it's the easiest way to support the channel. If you want to get more information and background information that aren't on any of these videos, you can join the channel, hop over to the members-only videos. We're working on more and more of those. A lot of those are more short, more personal, and answering specific questions that you guys send in. So feel free to join that. Appreciate you guys sticking around this long. This was quite an adventure and a lot of fun to work on. I've really honestly enjoyed it. I've learned a lot. I hope you guys have as well.